really honored to introduce this next session. This will be hosted, or this will be presented by Mr. Jeremy Lumpkin, and he is the director of bands at Hillgrove High School in Powder Springs, Georgia. Under his leadership, the Hillgrove Wind Symphony was invited to perform at the 2026 Minority Band Director Association's National Concert and Jazz Band Invitational. The Jazz Orchestra has also been invited to perform at prestigious events such as the Jazz Education Network Conference, Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic, Georgia Music Educators Association In-Service Conference. Jazz Ensemble has also performed at the Essentially Ellington Festival in Nashville. This session is entitled Jazz 101, Everything You Need to Start or Strengthen Your Jazz Ensemble. Help me welcome Mr. Jeremy Lumpkin.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me? You can everybody, okay, good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and go to my slides, and hopefully that will work. Can everybody see? Oh, can everybody see the slide? You can see the slide.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. You can see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, everyone, thank you so much for your time. I also put in the chat a fillable handout that goes along with the slide. And so hopefully if you have any notes you want to write down, you can also do so. Also, I have to go back and forth between my slide and this to see the chat. I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong in Zoom. I'm typically, my county forces me to use Teams, so I'm more familiar with that one. But if someone has a question, if you could just unmute and I would be more than happy to answer that. Can everybody see the session handout in the chat?
Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. So again, the title for this session is Everything You Need to Know or to Strengthen Your Jazz Ensemble. And I had the opportunity to take a look at who is with us today. And there's a lot of seasoned band directors in this session. So I want to say that, as we all know, there are multiple ways to achieve success in your program. And so hopefully with my session, I just kind of maybe remind you of some of the things you already do, maybe give you an opportunity to think about how to change or add to your program's initiatives and so on and so forth, and to understand the importance of jazz as an art form and how it can enhance your program in its totality. But this particular slide just tells a little bit about me. Again, I am the director of bands at Hillgrove High School. I also have the pleasure of serving as the jazz education chair for NAFME. And so if you have any questions about that, please reach out to me. And there's a ton of great resources there. I received my bachelor's degree from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville in music education. And then I went on to Cincinnati Conservatory to get a master's degree. And the saxophonist you see right there, that is a saxophone player that has inspired me. That is Sonny Rollins. And, as he just recently passed away, but he had a very, very strong legacy. And he is one that has really inspired me to perform. And he's the saxophone player that I usually introduce my saxophones to, just to get started in the road to trying to learn the jazz art form. But a reflection question I would like to ask you guys, and something that was asked to me when I first started, is if you do not have a jazz ensemble, then I would love to know why. Or if you do have a jazz ensemble, what are some areas of refinement to maximize the experience of your students? And when that question was asked to me, at first the answer was no, I did not have a jazz ensemble, and I had a lot of different reasons as to why. And then my mentor allowed me to, or challenged me to push my thinking further. That led me to where I am now. And so through the slide, it'll kind of go through those different experiences that I had that really did help. But the first thing was that he told me to do was to ignite your students' passion for the jazz art form. And before you do that, you have to also unite that with your program's priorities. And what I mean by that is if you come from a program where the priority is heavily focused into concert band or marching band, then you have to determine how much time am I willing and able to put into um, into jazz, and then what are the priorities of that particular ensemble. Some people may have aspirations to perform on the national stage, and some may have the passion to just introduce the students to the art form. And so, and there are many that are in between. So you have to make that decision first before you present um, the idea of having a jazz ensemble. Would be my suggestion. The other thing that I've learned, and I'm sure that some of you guys have noticed, is that whatever you are excited about, your students will be excited about too, if you have a good relationship and have created a safe environment for students to learn. Um, if I come in and I'm excited about a certain thing, then the majority of my students end up being excited about learning what I'm excited about. It may not be to the same level or to the same magnitude of my excitement, but at least they're open to exploring what I am interested in. And so I would strongly encourage you to, if you decide to go into this art form or any other art form, the level of excitement and passion you show toward it will be reciprocated in your students. And as we all know, jazz is America's art form. It is born and raised here through the Black culture. So I think that from a historical standpoint, it is also extremely important for us to have at least some form of jazz education in our curriculum. And this is just ignite your students continued, but play jazz music for your students. So a lot of us, when kids are entering our classroom, we'll have music playing for them, and a lot of times it's classical literature. But I would challenge you maybe one day a week to play jazz for the kids and just see how they react. And some students may react in a positive way. Some students may and react in terms of curiosity as to what are they listening to and why are they listening to it. And I think that is a great way to spark conversation about what the art form is and why it is important. Um, it is also an opportunity for students to learn a secondary instrument. And going back to some of my performances, when we played at the Midwest Clinic, the majority of the kids in the brass section played other instruments. A lot of my trombone players were euphonium and tuba players. A lot of two of my trumpet players were French horn players. My bass player was a French horn player. My piano player was a saxophone player, and it was just kids that liked spending time with other kids in the band program. And this was another opportunity for them to spend more time with each other and to learn together. And once they were introduced to the art form, they realized that it was fun, but it was challenging. But they practiced together, and they formed a bond that led them to where they were at that particular point. So it is a great opportunity for students to learn a secondary instrument. And also, in my opinion, it is music that is closely related to what they listen to on a daily basis. And some examples of that would be Snarky Puppy. That is a jazz fusion group that plays a lot of covers of popular music, and um, they have their own music, but it is very closely related to what they listen to every day. So with the Hunter Tones, Nine Sparks Riot is a new group that has some really nice things, and then of course the RH Factor, uh, which was ran by a famous trumpet player, and that is the Roy Hargrove experience, and that music is very very closely related to what students typically listen to. And if anybody has any questions, please just unmute and ask. If not, I'll keep going because there's a lot of slides. Let's see. All right, performance opportunities for your students. If you don't have time to do a jazz ensemble at your school, then there are hopefully in your areas a district or region honored jazz ensemble where students have to audition to perform. There's also All State Jazz Band. There's performance evaluations in your areas if you have them. Outside of scholastic school ran things, there are regionally essentially Ellington groups. Generations Jazz Festival, which is a part of the Jazz Education Network, and there's also community and summer jazz programs. I'm based in Atlanta, and we have just recently started. Mr. Young and I, Cedric Young and I, have started the Atlanta Youth Jazz Ensemble, and that's an opportunity for kids to come in and perform. But there's also the Rialto Jazz and there's the Gaiso Jazz as well. So depending on what area you are in, there are opportunities for your students to perform in outside exterior ensembles for jazz. Exposure and income opportunities, right? So from an exposure standpoint, with our jazz ensembles, it's much easier to take 26 people on a trip or an experience than it is to take an 150-piece marching band or a 60-piece concert band, especially with equipment and with students. You can open up for professionals. For example, the Atlanta Youth Jazz Ensemble just opened up for multiple performers for the Atlanta Jazz Festival, and it was an amazing opportunity for them to not only meet professional musicians, but to perform at Atlanta Symphony Hall. And so that was an amazing opportunity for those students. Jazz evaluations are also a little bit easier to manage in terms of travel and athletic events. There are multiple opportunities to perform before like a professional basketball or professional baseball game, and these are just ways to create a different experience for your students. And then in terms of source of income, which is basically fundraising, there's a lot of store openings that need live entertainment. A lot of times they will come to the schools and ask for some sort of entertainment. A lot of times in my area, they'll ask for a drum line. Well, this is an opportunity for you to send out a combo or a small jazz ensemble to, especially if you have a vocalist, because that is a great way to connect with the common person. That is a good opportunity for that. Weddings and gatherings, a lot of times you'll get paid to do those types of things. Um, a lot of times, concerts that turn into fundraisers are usually generally more popular to non-band parents if it is music that is closely related to what people listen to. And so we found success in doing fundraisers with our jazz bands in that regard. And then sponsorships. A lot of times people like to sponsor things that make them feel good. And so those are a few among many opportunities for you to bring an income to your band program using your jazz ensemble. And these are some pictures of some exposure opportunities for kids. This is us at the top picture is us at the Gen conference in 2025 when we got to perform with Camille Thurman. And Camille Thurman is the lady playing the tenor saxophone. She's also a vocalist, and it was awesome. I've got kids that still talk about that to this day. And that performance happened at 10 o'clock at night, and so I was extremely concerned about having kids go all day and then have to play at night with no warm up, and it was a vibe. The kids really had a good experience, and they still talk about that. This is us at the Midwest Clinic. And again, in the front row, you'll notice I have a flute player who that's all she played. And that young lady just came to me and said, I'm a senior. All of my friends are in jazz band. Can I please join the jazz band? I'm like, absolutely. And I didn't write anything out for her. She did it all herself. Half those trombone players are tuba players and so on and so forth. So they had the opportunity to perform Michelle Fernandez's music and to also perform with Chris Crenshaw and Marcus Prentup. So that was a great experience for those kids that they probably would not had otherwise in any other ensemble at our school. This is the Nashville, the essentially Ellington Nashville regional that our students got to perform in, and that was the first time the kids had the opportunity to meet Ron Carter, the late Ron Carter, who had a great impact on our students. He was tough on them, like Ron is, but he really made a huge impact, especially on my saxophone players. And so that was a great opportunity that segued into a performance opportunity and trip for those particular students. And this is when I was at Collins Hill. This is a Walmart. I got a phone call. They remodeled the Walmart, and they said, "We need entertainment. We'll give you $1,000 if you just bring an ensemble to play as we open the doors." And so I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So they opened the doors. We set up. They gave me the check before we even played. We played like 3 or 4 tunes, and as we were playing, people were pulling up in their sharpened carts, just listening and not knowing what they're listening to, but just still moving their foot, tapping their foot. And it took an hour, and it was $1,000 check. And so that's what I mean by using your ensembles as opportunities to bring income into your program. Are there any questions thus far, or anything of that nature? No. Okay, I'll keep going. So this is us at the Race for the Cure. And that was also an opportunity for us to make some money. And what was cool about this was I believe this particular performance was at midnight. So, but because it was a fundraiser to raise funds for cancer, we got a lot of donations from people that were walking because they lost a loved one, or they too are are going through a hard time dealing with cancer. And so that's another way. It's a performance. It's a late performance, so the kids really enjoyed it. But it was another means of income. So if you have any of these types of things in your area, or you live in a pretty populous area that might have a Race for the Cure event, maybe you can take your jazz ensemble there and just ask for donations, and you'd be surprised at the source of income you can gain from that. But shifting gears a little bit, more ways to get your kids interested in the ensemble. At my school, it's a pretty academically driven school. So when I offered, if you were in jazz band for 4 years, you can get a chord for graduation. That sparked a ton of interest, and it was kind of a shock to me. It wasn't my idea; it was one of my student leadership's ideas. They were like, our kids want to go to graduation looking like, curtains. They want to have robes everywhere, and so what we did is we created a 4-year jazz band chord along with a marching band chord, and that just increased membership up to the point to where we now have 3 jazz ensembles at our school. The other thing that, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to understand is that the kids want name brand cool gear. So, if it has a Nike check on it, they don't care how much it costs, or Under Armour logo on it. They don't care how much it costs. They want to wear the cool gear. So, the t-shirts and the polos, the hoodies, they want it all to be name brand, but it really did increase interest in the activity. When we perform outside, we all got matching sunglasses. That was a hype for the kids. And then we also got what's called jazz fronts. And if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a website for polybandstand.com. That is where a lot of fronts are made. They're cheap considerably, and they can print your logo on them. And so that is where I would suggest, if you do jazz fronts, to get those. And that's what these are. This is both Collins Hill and Hillgrove. That's the shirt, and it's got that Nike check in it. So that was the most important part. And then also the front has both schools emblem on it, and it really made a difference in their performance and how just proud they looked to sit behind those jazz fronts. I will say, if you do go with jazz fronts, I would start off with the trombone fronts for the saxophone ones, because the saxophone fronts are really, really short. And so what we use the trombone fronts so the kids can actually see what they're reading. But that would be my suggestion, because I've had a lot of people ask where to get those fronts. So some key deterrents. And again, these are kind of some generic things that I did in my research of asking people why they don't have a jazz band, or why they don't have a very involved jazz band. And so some of the reasons are, I am not a jazzer. And I get that a lot, especially from band directors that are very heavily classically driven. And my suggestion to you is, you don't have to be a jazzer. What does a jazzer even mean? What is the definition of that? And when I ask that question, a lot of people will say, well, I can't solo. Well, there are a lot of successful people in the jazz education business that are not as good of solos as they want to be. I am not as good of a soloist as I want to be. There are professional musicians that are not as good of soloists as they want to be. That's why you have to practice as a musician, no matter what genre you're teaching. We are forever a student in this art. We're always learning. We're always molding. So I would like for people who think that way to shift their minds into, maybe it is something that you can do. And so, jazz, when you're getting started, is great for ear training. A lot of times when you do just listening and playing back what you hear, that is a great way to train your ear as a teacher and as a student. And then from there, you imitate what you hear from your voice first. You try to sing it first. And then, from your singing, then you try to put it to your instrument. I know Wynton Marsalis said, you can't sing it, you can't swing it, right. And so that is a big thing in the jazz idiom, is audiation. And then you play and learn with your students. What that does is that builds rapport. A lot of times when I'm doing stuff, and I'll show you a video of me playing here soon, I'll make a mistake, whether it's on purpose or whether it's on accident. But I show the students that, I have a healthy relationship with failure. If I make a mistake, I just try again. I don't want anyone to be embarrassed about trying something new. And of course, that that is a whole nother session in itself about building an atmosphere of safety and an atmosphere where you're not afraid to take a risk. And so once you do that, then the kids will be more prone to try that. And then once they do, you end up boosting their confidence. And then it's not necessarily a fight to get students to improvise or to just play by themselves when you go down the line in class. So another deterrent, I do not have time for another ensemble. And this is a big one. And we all feel this way. We all feel this way. And so my response to that is to do your best to invest time into the art form. And the reason why, you can align the time investment with professional and personal goals. You must do that. And what I mean by that is, if, for example, I'll use myself as an example. I work an hour away from the school. I have two children. They're one's 7 or one's 8. She just turned 8, and one is 3. And we have a marching band. We have 3 concert bands and 3 jazz bands, 3 winter guards. So it is, and there's just 2 of us. So to find time to do a jazz ensemble, and for my goals to do a jazz ensemble at a high level, I have to really, really think about my personal goals in terms of my life. I have to make sure that I invest time into my family. That is a non-negotiable. Making sure I'm there for my children, non-negotiable. And then professionally, I want to make sure that whatever I present to the world in terms of performance, I want to make sure that it is as a high level as possible. So I have to really be strategic on when and where I have my jazz ensemble practices. And that answer is different for everyone, and only you can make that decision. And I really want to stress that, because if you try to do something that someone else does and it doesn't align with your personal and professional goals, then that's when you start to run into problems. So that is something you want to make sure you agree with before you get really deep into it. And some creative rehearsal ideas is, if your school has a flex period, we do a jazz block during our advisement time, which meets 1 day a week on Wednesdays for an hour. A lot of schools may have jazz, what they call jazz club. A lot of middle schools will call it that during lunch. I just mentioned advisement. There are plenty of schools, like I know one of them is Hoover High School out of Alabama, that have jazz band before school, and very successful for an hour every day before school. And there are multiple benefits to that. Some deterrents in terms of young kids getting to school on time, but that is an option. There are plenty of schools that have jazz programs that rehearse after marching band rehearsal, which seems pretty daunting to me. That wouldn't be something that I would want to do, but that might be something that you could do in your program depending on your marching band schedule. So those are just some creative ideas of when to rehearse. And the most time-saving option is to program concert literature that is influenced by jazz. And that could be anything from a Kataj Copley, from composers like Kataj Copley, Kevin Day, Michael Sweeney, Mike Camiff. There's a beautiful arrangement of Autumn Leaves out there. I think it's a medium. It's a level medium. It's gorgeous. There are contemporary pieces that have jazz influences, like Blue Shades, quartets, like those types of things, depending on what level of ensemble you're working with. That is a great way to get students introduced to something different, whether it's swinging eighth notes and understanding that it is against the jazz law to swing eighth notes dotted 8/16. We don't do that. And we'll talk about that a little later, but that is an opportunity to get the entire program at least acclimated. And in terms of creative rehearsal time, there's one school, I believe it's Cartersville High School in Georgia, where they have a 90-minute block. And in the spring, they cut that block in half, and 45 minutes of it is full ensemble. The other 45-minute is chamber music or jazz. So that, I think that is awesome. If you're willing to sacrifice that kind of time, that way everybody in the program gets an opportunity to do both chamber music and jazz without having to add something to their schedule because they're already scheduled for class. So that's another creative opportunity in terms of rehearsal time. Moving on. It is not worth my time. Believe it or not, I've had people tell me that it is not, jazz is not worth their time. And they may not have used those exact words, but that is kind of the mindset and idea that some people may have. And if that's how you truly feel, then that is up to you. But my answer to that would be, I would encourage you to think that it is worth your time, because for my best players in my ensemble, and I've taught at 3 schools, have been involved in jazz because it enhances your reading ability. A 25-minute concert for a concert band might be 4 pieces, whereas a 25-minute jazz concert is like 12 or 13. And so you're reading more pieces. It boosts your confidence because it is chamber music, so it's typically one on a part. I believe that most students have better musicianship and creativity because of the improvisational component and the ability to change how you play based on the style, based on the time period, based on a lot of different things. And I'm not saying that this can't be true for any idiom of music, but what I'm saying is that it is very, very often true in jazz. And so, with all that being stated, like these are some of the things that it does for your students. But for you, if you need to, you can hire someone to run the jazz ensemble if you truly don't have time to do that. But I had two really good friends, one really good friend, one mentor, tell me that no matter how good a teacher is, no one is going to care about your program priorities more than you, the director, because you are the one in charge. On the flip side, your kids want to be with you. Not that they don't necessarily want to be with whomever you hire, but a lot of times kids, especially in your lower groups, they join those exterior ensembles just to spend time with you because you are a safe place for them and you make them feel better from a musical standpoint and from a confidence standpoint. And you know your program's priorities, and you know that student well enough to know how to respond to whatever's happening. You know that student well enough to see if they're having a good day or a bad day, better than whomever you hire to bring in. And we all also know that just because someone can play doesn't mean they can teach. So if you do bring somebody in, I would suggest do some vetting and all those things. Not that you wouldn't, but just making sure that they're teaching the way you would like for your students to be taught. Is would be my suggestion for that. Are there any questions so far? No. Okay.
Hey,
I'm
let me
sorry.
put a
Yes.
question out there for you, Jeremy. I'm going to swing back real quick. Lois had a great question. She was asking about your instrumentation and what that looks like.
Yes. So instrumentation with our three ensembles, what we do is our top ensemble is what we call traditional instrumentation. So trombones, trumpets, saxophones, rhythm section. Our lower two groups is anybody. If you play oboe and you don't want to learn how to play saxophone or anything else, and you want to learn the art form, then you can come and be in those groups. And there is literature that is being created that have oboe and bassoon parts. There are plenty of Stan Kenton charts that have mellophone. They call them mellophoniums, the mellophone parts that French horn players can play. And so I'm not too terribly strict on instrumentation if a kid wants to perform. And if a kid gets to the point to where they're performing at a very high level, then I will encourage them strongly to learn a traditional jazz instrument. I have a lot of clarinet players that are learning saxophone, tenor saxophone. I have a lot of flute players learning alto saxophone because that is the direct doubling instrument. Um, and so when it comes to instrumentation, I try to get the kid hooked to the art form first and then worry about the instrumentation second. Um, and especially with my vocalists, I have a lot of vocalists that come in and they want to sing their favorite song. And if I can't find it, I'll write it. And that just gives them exposure. And then as they get more into it, then I'll try to sway them closer to introduce them to some jazz vocalists and ask them to start to imitate what they hear, because a lot of times young students do too much vocal acrobatics, if you will. And so trying to get them honed in is like not as important as getting them hooked. So with instrumentation, it really just depends on, in my opinion, what works best for you in your particular situation. I
And
hope
then,
that answered your question.
and then we had two more questions from Mr. Taylor. One, what does your daily routine look like to develop your soloist? And then also, what's your strategy for creating like a strong pipeline for your rhythm section?
So the rhythm section one is actually in the slide, and I will answer that one. In terms of the soloist, the best thing to do is to start with the voice and to start with rhythms. If you go in and you start with the theory, you're going to lose kids because a lot of kids have not had strong enough music theory to jump in and just start soloing. So what I like to do, and I've got a video that I will show you what I do with that. But we sing a lot, and we sing on one pitch, and then we'll sing rhythm, and then from the rhythm we'll add dynamics. So for example, if I put on an Aebersold track for a concert F blues, and we'll play concert F, I may do 4 chord notes like dum bum bum bum, and then I will talk about jazz being an emphasis of upbeat. So I'll ask them to emphasize beats 2 and beats 4. Dum bum bum bum. And then we might go to eighth notes. Do ba do ba do ba do ba. And what I just did is I just changed my vowel shape to get the sound to be different. Do va. And then I asked them to take that and imitate it on their instrument. And then from there, we do different rhythms. Da do ba do ba. Da do ba ba ba. And when we talk about the subdivision of triplets, triplet, triplet, triplet. Swing is 2/3 downbeat, 1/3 upbeat. And so we talk about those things. And the reason we do that is because everybody knows how to play a concert F by that point. Everybody understands what I'm talking about rhythmically. So it makes transition from here to here a lot smoother. And then once they get that, then we'll start outlining chords. Then we'll go to passing tones. But because we don't have a class, if a kid really wants to dive in, then that becomes a one-on-one conversation with that student, and that becomes an opportunity for me to get that student attached to either an outside source or a lessons teacher. Does that help? Hopefully. Awesome. Okay, and thank you guys so much for asking these questions. I'm gonna keep going with the slides and see. So the instrumentation question, which I think we all kind of talked about already. So I'll go through these. But that the instrumentation is one of the most popular excuses that I've heard. We talked about secondary instruments. There are flex charts out there for young bands that have flute parts, they have clarinet parts, they have horn parts, and they also have world instrument parts, where you can have people come in. There's also some jazz charts that have string parts. So if you've got a string program in your school, then that's a great way to integrate your program with their program. Administration love that. The community loves when programs intertwine like that and do a concert. It is also an opportunity for you to include students that are not band students. So if you're at a school and you have a church drummer or somebody that plays piano that's maybe not in band, that that is a great way to recruit, and B, that is another opportunity for you to get somebody a gym in the school that you didn't know you had. Maybe that kid was a football player and couldn't do band, or a basketball player or a volleyball player and couldn't be involved in band, but they are a killer drummer or a great piano player or an awesome guitar player. And so that is an opportunity for you to reach out to those students. You just do a morning announcement or play during lunches and just ask people, like, do you want to travel with us? Do you want to do this? Maybe it's an opportunity for there. And then the other thing is to be creative. My principal is a vocalist, so I've had my principal come in and sing. I've played with my band a lot of times. I've had parents come and play with us. There's nothing like a spring concert where a parent gets up out of the audience, comes up, sit at a drum set, and it might be awful. But the point is the response and the memories that you create could inspire somebody like that there might be a 5-year-old in the audience that's like, I want to do that, so that is a great way for you to use creativity into building numbers in your entire program. The rhythm section. Okay. The rhythm section, in my opinion, I'm a saxophone player, but the rhythm section, in my opinion, is the most challenging section to build for a multitude of reasons. A lot of times, these kids are on secondary instruments, so they're having to learn how to play from scratch. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to invite students outside your program to join. But when you do that, a lot of times those kids can't read, or they don't understand, like a guitar player, or may only understand power chords and not understand how to chunk chords like Freddie Green or something like that. So you have to spend a lot of time with the rhythm section. And in my opinion, some of the jazz programs around the country that I respect at a high level spend the majority of time with their rhythm sections first. the majority, because they have to be a unit and they have to also understand their roles. For example, a lot of people think that the drummer controls time in a swing chart. That is false. The bass player does. The bass player is the one with the consistent time in their hand. The drum set is ornamentation to the bass player. Before amplification, the feathering of the bass drum was there to amplify the bass player, which is why the bass player typically before amplification stands in front of the bass drum. The ride cymbal it also helps with time. Hi-hat also helps with time, but the membrane drums are ornamentation, right? The piano player's job is to, fill in space and make sure that you ornament in multiple ways. And there are, Count Basie did it differently than Ellington did. Count Basie was more of a sprinkle here, where Ellington was very, very melodic in his playing. So it is very important to study the roles of the instruments and within the style of the music you're playing. Because in Latin music, it's a completely different story. In a ballad, like how a drum set player should play a ballad. 9 times out of 10, your drummers are too loud and your drummers are doing too much with drums. There's been times where I've taken everything away from a drummer except for the ride cymbal and the hi-hat. And then I would add the kick in, and then I would add the snare. And then halfway through the season, I'd give them a tom because it forces them to listen and to have a good time. So the rhythm section is very, very, very challenging to build, but it is definitely doable if you put the time into it. And that's where I would put my resources first. If you've got opportunity to bring someone in, bring in a bass player, bring in a bass player first, right? Then bring in a piano player, right? And then bring in a drum. Like that's just what I would do. I'm not saying that's the way to do it, but it's a very hard thing to build. And then you can see it. There's a teacher or a parent that is, I talked about that, willing to cover a part in a concert. And I say beggars can't be choosers because at my first school, I played drums. We did a New Orleans, it was a very small school. We did like a New Orleans style Soul Rebels type of band. And I didn't have anybody willing to do percussion, so I did it. And I was very bad, but I figured it out. And it got to the point to where it was fine. But do you have any more questions about the rhythm section stuff? Whoever had that question.
And team, you can unmute now. We enabled that feature. We had some issues a little earlier on, but you can unmute if you need to.
I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any. So if not, then I'll keep going.
Can I jump in?
Oh, yes, please.
So yeah, I was the one who originally asked the question about the instrumentation, which I love what you do, because that's very similar to what I did, was give the kids the opportunity to switch instruments. I didn't use a whole lot of the world parts or the other parts, but that worked really well for me. But I also wanted to just emphasize the fronts, because I got mine from the same company. I had a friend who was a graphic artist who designed them for us, and the kids loved it. And it was a really great way to showcase our ensemble. And so if those that are listening that have young jazz ensembles, especially, you have the opportunity to do that, you should. But thank you so much, Jeremy. A lot of really great information today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So the different types of ensemble. So this is something that I'm going to put my slides into into a Google Drive, and where it says musical examples, you can click on that. It's hyperlinked to the style of what that sounds like, so that you can get a better sense of what that may sound like. But so the New Orleans type of brass band. If you've ever been to New Orleans or have seen the weddings or the funerals or things like that have the New Orleans style jazz bands, it's really, really cool, and it's a great opportunity for improvisation, and kids really, really like listening to it. And again, it's very close to what they listen to on a daily basis. There's little jazz bands, and there's music out for that. And basically what a little jazz band is like 2 to 3 saxophones, a guitar, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, a bass player, guitar player. So if your jazz ensembles aren't large, there are flex pieces and professional recordings of ensembles that can satisfy your instrumentation. If you've got a really, really good saxophone section, and then 1 trumpet player and a piano and drum set player, or just the saxophone section, there's a music out on eJazz Lines called Super Sax Music, and it takes a lot of jazz standards and it puts it into a 5-piece ensemble under a soloist, which is typically a trumpet player. And it is challenging. It's very challenging, but a lot of times in my experience, the saxophone players will rise to the occasion, and it'll make them feel very special if they were able to get up and do chamber music that's just a saxophone chamber music. So it's called super sax. It's very tough, but there are some pieces out there that are doable for high school, and then there are renditions out there for middle school saxophone players as well. Dixieland Band. This I struggled to put this one in here because a Dixieland Band is very close to the like Preservation Hall, New Orleans style bands, but just depending on your community, there are different types of things. Like, for example, in the Dixieland Band, there's a banjo, whereas you don't really see that a lot in the Youngbloods Brass Band, but you would see it in Preservation Hall performances in New Orleans. So that is an opportunity to do something different if you've got a banjo player. The Hunter Tones, which is also like Snarky Puppy, is something that's a little bit more contemporary. They do covers of Michael Jackson tunes or Stevie Wonder charts or Anita Baker charts. It's the same thing kind of as there's a new group out of Atlanta. The name is slipping my mind. I think it's Revolution gosh, I can't think of the name, but it is Renaissance. That's it. Yeah, the Renaissance Band. Thank you for that. The Renaissance Band that do something similar to this, and it's getting a lot of traction to the point to where like now Rick Ross is going out and having orchestras play behind, his music, and the integration of just wind and string performance with popular music is starting to become stronger, and I love it. And so your school or your community could help aid in that by doing it and getting out in the community and doing the same sort of thing. And then there's different types of jazz combos that are more traditional that you can play jazz standards with. And I'm going through these pretty quickly because I know we're getting close to time. But some people say jazz is not for string choirs, and I'll say false. It is. There are show choirs. There are pops concerts. There's combined ensembles with orchestra. Snarky Puppy does this a lot with the Silva album, where they put their whole setup inside of an ensemble and they sell that music. And there are a ton of charts that have vocal pieces where you can involve your chorus and or choir. The Contents by Chick Corea is one that is a whole album of, a jazz quintet with a chamber orchestra. And if you need some sort of ammunition to go to your admin to do something cool, then you can let them know that these things exist. Not a lot of people do it. So how cool would it be for our school or our community to be pioneers in this? And maybe you can get some funding to do some really cool things. And so that's an idea there. And then the Chapman University Big Band and Vocal Ensemble. This is where they, and I've linked the music there, where they take a jazz band and a vocal ensemble and do performances and travel around and do tours that way as well. So those are a few different ensemble ideas you can do. And then rehearsing the jazz ensemble is, it is very similar to rehearsing your concert band. Good tone is good tone. Good time is good time. All of the things. So there's a lot of universal concept: tone and balance, articulation, intonation, style and rhythm. When I say style and rhythm, I mean, when you focus so heavily in your concert literature on style and rhythm, the same can be true in the jazz ensemble, just by listening to what you're playing and matching the style and time period. Tempo and post control, seating and setup, all these things you think about, you do that on a daily basis in your ensembles. Tone and balance, the fundamentals of sound, they're slightly different. For example, in my humble opinion, a classical sound on a saxophone is different than a jazz tone on a saxophone. And there are many different ways to achieve the goal or the sound that you have in your mind. You just have to pick a way and stick to it. What is also challenging is to try to create a jazz sound on saxophone with a classical mouthpiece. They're designed to do different things. So it's not possible. It is very possible, but it is harder to do those things. So I would say equipment and reeds are very important to achieve a certain sound that you're going for. And that's true for classical literature as well. Your equipment matters. So that's something to consider in my period. Long tones, very important. Scales, very important when it comes to playing. Use scale degrees like 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 5, 1 2 3 7, all those things to help teaching and outlining chords. You can design warm-ups with scales. We do that in concert band already, if you play in rounds, so on and so forth. But the cool thing about playing, in rounds, instead of going 1 3 5, you can go 1 3 5 7 and get that major seventh in there to make that tone. Pentatonic scale is a great one to start with, just 5 notes that can be played over multiple chord changes. So that is a great one to use, and that's one we start with a lot of times. Then goes to the blues scale, the major scale, the minor scale, and so on and so forth. The balance concepts, it's the same skill. However you balance your concert band should be how you balance your jazz bands, and listening and the setups, all the things. The universal. The concepts are so universal, and so that's why when people say I'm not a jazzer, I can't do this, you're already kind of doing it. You do it on a daily basis. You're just doing it with different literature and a smaller ensemble. And I've got 8 minutes, so I'm gonna try to get through this pretty quickly. I'm sorry. But style and rhythm, beat emphasis. Emphasis are usually on the upbeats, just like with the snare drum. Snare is on 2 and 4. If you go to a concert and you hear people clapping on 1 and 3, it's uncomfortable. That is a natural feeling, and this is the same thing. So you want your beat emphasis to be on the upbeats, on beats 2 and 4. Swing is a subdivision of triplets, not dotted 8/16. So you want to think 2/3 downbeat, 1/3 upbeat. So triple let, triple let, triple let, triple let, do da is how you want to get started in the swing pattern, and not the dotted 8/16. And the reason why you don't want to do a dotted 8/16 is because jazz, being a vocal art form, when people sing, they don't necessarily sing in a choppy manner. They sing very smooth and connected, and so you want your lines to be smooth and connected. So there is that. And then I talked about 2/3 downbeat, and then try to be true to the art form. And so the slide has the slide has information about microphone setup, rehearsal chart setup. Like, we rehearse in a square, not in a traditional setup, so that the lead players can hear each other. And that's a great way to get the ears listening inside the ensemble. And it also has chart references. It has links to multiple websites where you can find charts that are from easy all the way to advanced. I know a lot of people use JW Pepper, but there are multiple websites out there, and that is all in the slide that I've shared with you. I know I'm running out of time, and it's a lot of information, but I'm glad I was able to answer some questions. And if there are any more questions that anyone has, please feel free to ask them. But please refer to the slide about the back half of that, which is just equipment based, setup based, and where to find literature that matches what your needs are. And there are probably 5 or 6 slides of just different websites for you to look at, and they're all linked, so it should take you right to it. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Hey, Jeremy, there's a question in the chat from Andrea asking about what does your warm-up process look like?
Yeah, so a lot of times what we'll do is, and I have a video of it. I hate that I couldn't show you, but it's in there. Is I will start rehearsal by playing. When it's time to play, I'll turn the metronome on 2 and 4, and I'll play an F, and then it is a call and response. And so I'll start with a long tone. They'll play a long tone. They'll do some sort of rhythm, and then I will change the rhythm to outline a chord, and then we'll go into an F blues, and then we'll go into Billy's bounce, and that gets their ears going. And then I also have a harmonic warm up that's kind of like a ballad, and then we hop in to the literature. So I warm up the ears first, and I warm up the mind and navigating through chords. And then depending on what piece we're playing, we may talk about the scale relationships to that piece or that chart, so that when it's time to improvise, I can just go down the line and point to somebody, and they're comfortable with the chord changes. So that's typically how we warm up at the beginning of the season before getting ready for a performance.
Jeremy, you mind maybe giving us a minute or two of that? If we can squeeze that in there, if that's all right with you.
Of the videos? Yeah, sure. So let's see. Can you guys see that? Can you see me with holding the saxophone?
Yes.
Okay, that was me a long time ago with hair. I believe this is the triplet exercise that I do. This is not what I would start with, but this is, let's see if I hit play.
Make sure you share the audio.
Oh, how do I do that? Sorry. Let's
Under
see.
share.
Uh-huh. Let's see, share. Is it advanced sharing or multiple participants can share simultaneously?
No.
Click on that that arrow
Okay.
and go to advanced sharing options. And there should be something on there that says share sound. Nope, it's not on there.
Nope, I don't see it.
Oh, y'all can see my screen? Sorry.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Would it be?
no, it's on the microphone. Go over to by your microphone and click on that arrow and go to audio settings at the bottom.
Try now. Try to reshare it and make sure you click the sound link now.
Here you go.
Oh, share it now? Okay. Entire screen. Share. Okay. Can you see the video?
Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
we can see it.
There's no audio.
Oh, there's no audio still? Oh no. Let's see. I don't see where it says to share audio, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's okay. Keep going. And then if it's embedded in your video, people can see it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I thought it would work. Maybe it's in video settings. Yeah. But if again, if you look at the slide, it'll show basically we start with singing and then we start with one note patterns and triplets, and then we go into a piece, into a chart. Let's see. It says, when having string players in jazz ensemble, do you have a cap number? I really don't, because I haven't had like the entire orchestra come in. So what I'll do is if I have a violin or a viola come in, I'll have them read a sax, or I will transpose a saxophone part for them. If I have a cello come in, I'll usually do a trombone part, and the bass player can read the bass parts whenever I'm integrating string players. But a lot of times string players want to come in because they want to learn how to play guitar or they want to play upright bass. This past year, we went to New Orleans and we had a viola player that picked up bass to play. So they actually want to do that on their own. But we have had young musicians that want to play their violin, and so I'll just write out a part for them, and they play and they sit in the ensemble. And it says, who are some of the directors, clinicians, or musicians you have spoken with help guide and expand your approach to teaching? So one of the best clinics that I have gone to was the BDA clinic up in New York that's put on by Lincoln Jazz at Lincoln Center. It was by far, it was extremely amazing. I learned how to build a rhythm section. I learned how to use mutes properly. I learned how to balance. I learned when and when not to use vibrato. It was just great. And then at the end of that particular session, we would go to jazz clubs and we would take what we learned and then watch people actually do it. So it was amazing. And then there I got an opportunity to meet the jazz director at Osceola, who always wins Jazz at Lincoln Center, New York. Dr. Ali Lindell at Memphis Central, also a great resource for not only building great jazz musicians, but building stuff from scratch. He has taught me so much about how to do a lot with a little. So there's that. And then in terms of musicians, talking to Marcus Printup and talking to Chris Crenshaw, talking to Tia Fuller and some of these and Camille Thurman about what they did to get to where they are and what I need to do to be better. That is how I take that information and I just apply it the best way I can in my situation. And that has been extremely helpful for me. So again, it's a passion of mine. So I apologize for going over on time. I hope that my information has been helpful. And again, what I didn't get to is will be shared with you. And then in that session handout, you may be able to click on the links there. But if the links there don't work, then they should work in the slide. But thank you all for spending this time with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy. That was a fantastic session. So much great information and just a great resource. So thank you. Uh, at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Monica so she can present the next session.